You do.
So I was saying we have 99 organisations which span about 60 countries and who are running or supporting over 208,000 schools, which comes to a reach of about 18.2 million children. And these organisations are standalone schools, school networks, and education support organisations. And the latter are providing core support services to schools, such as academic services, capacity building, financial services, and more. And to achieve our vision, we're working in 3 core areas. The first is to strengthen and grow our global community. And we do that through events like Spotlight today, where we want to facilitate networking. We want to allow for sharing and networking and connections in the community and beyond. Secondly, through our Impact at Scale labs, we test promising approaches from within the community and we diffuse that evidence. And thirdly, we partner strategically to shape policy and scale evidenced solutions. So if anyone would like to hear more about those elements of our work, please do email me or drop your contact details in the chat and I'll follow up with you after. But what's in store for Spotlight session? So this is a monthly event designed for organisation within GSF's community to showcase an element of their work. We really want to facilitate collaboration and networking and showcase what our community is doing. Do ask questions of our speakers today. We'd love for this to be as interactive as possible. And even after the event, you'll have the speakers' contact details to follow up. So I'd now like to introduce Nikki Pizzulo, Chief Development Officer, and Jessica Lang, Business Development Manager for NABU, a tech-enabled publisher of multilingual children's books, and they are improving literacy through creating culturally responsive mother tongue stories. So I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll hand over now.
Thank you so much, Steph, for that introduction. Would you mind allowing me to share my screen so I can share our pitch deck with everyone? Thank you. Oh.
Did that work?
Yes, thank you. Just give me 1 second and then I will. Fabulous. Everyone can see. So hello, everyone. Thank you, Steph, for introducing us. My name is Jessica Lang, and my incredible colleague, Nikki Pizzulo, is also on the call and will be taking over some part of the presentation. I'll let her say hi.
Hi, everyone. It's so awesome to be here. I was saying to Jessica yesterday that I think one of my favorite things to do in this sector is to be able to get on phone calls or, webinars or be in person with other people from around the world who are working in the sector. It just feels really comfortable and feels like home. So happy to be with all of you and just really appreciative of this time together and the ability to tell you a little bit more about NABU, an organization and a product that we absolutely love. So thank you. Thanks, Jess.
So, as you know, this month we celebrated International Literacy Day, and shockingly, there are still 400 million children who cannot read, and 60% of those children do not have access to a book in their own language. Shocking statistics, and scary that they continue to grow. But before we get into the why of NABU and the how of NABU, I would like everyone to take a moment and to think about their childhood reading activities. What was the first book that you remember reading? Maybe even the book that was the most influential in your life. I would love it if people could share it in the chat, or if you're brave enough to say it aloud. I'll start. My favorite book is Harry Potter. It still is Harry Potter, and I hope this is a safe space. No one can make fun of me. I continue to read it every year, and it was very influential in my love of fantasy and creative writing. Would anyone else like to share? Maybe some in the chat. Yay, Harry Potter fans. Thank goodness. Great. Yeah, I'm so happy. That makes me very happy. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for sharing. I hope that they continue to come through. And maybe we can even save the chat for any recommendations that do. Oh, some hands were up, please. Go ahead.
Hey Jeff, I want to talk about my favorite book. It was called Hello Children, and funny enough, I read it in school, and it was just about a man and his family and what they do in the morning. And for me, the fascination was the kind of breakfast they were having. And I was like, one day I want to have such breakfast when I grow up, you know?
I
So
love
yeah,
that.
I remember it. I remember it very well.
Thank you for sharing. I love that. Anyone else? Oh, Enid Blyton. Beautiful. And Indian mythology stories. Oh, wow. I'd love to read about those. I love that. Anybody else want to share? Okay, I will continue on if that is all right. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for being brave enough. I really appreciated the Harry Potter support as well. So what is NABU? NABU is a nonprofit and leading publisher of early grade mother tongue storybooks. We create culturally responsive mother tongue stories by the community for the community. NABU was born in 2010 when our incredible co-creator, Taniela Allison, was building schools in Haiti. What she saw there changed her approach and the trajectory of her life. What she saw all around was that even in the poorest slums, people had access to low-cost mobile phones. They are essential to our lives. I can guarantee that every single one of you have one right next to you. So we have cell phones and we have a huge gap in mother tongue educational resources. So in that, NABU was born. NABU's mission is to help solve the global literacy crisis, to help children read and rise to their full potential. So why mother tongue books? Let me explain. During our pilot in Haiti in 2014, all of the mother tongue books on our virtual library were read very early on, and the rest were untouched. We saw really high engagement with mother tongue content, and it makes sense, of course. These kids from the slum of Cité Soleil, they speak Haitian Creole. They speak it in the playground, at home, and then when they come to class, they're expected to learn French, but they don't. These children are often left behind. And we see this across our markets in Rwanda and in Kenya and the Philippines. Children speak one language at home, and then they have to learn in another language at school. A more recent example of this, a few weeks ago, our CTO visited a rural community library in Rwanda. The circled books in this image represent the books that are in local languages. The rest of the books are all donated books in English and French. These books were the only books in the library that were ever checked out. So real observations and our own data fueled by research is why we chose to focus on mother tongue literacy. Research shows us that increased access to culturally relevant mother tongue books directly promotes higher reading engagement, leading to higher literacy scores. I'm from South Africa. Officially, we have 11 national languages and many more dialects spoken. My mother tongue is English. I'm extremely privileged to see myself in books, to read them in my own language, to have countless options. But did you? What is your mother tongue language? I would love to hear from the chat. If everyone could put in the chat, what languages. I really love to hear and see what languages are represented in these types of meetings, because it's usually such a diverse. Bengali, Spanish, Tamil. Oh, I knew German, incredible. So we have a huge diverse group of languages here. And so I'm sure many of you can, see yourself in the books, or see yourself in sort of the mission that we have in mother tongue language and books. So thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate that. Whoops, I made the chat really big. So thank you for sharing your mother tongue languages. So now I'd like to just take you through how NABU works. We have 3 core components: our content creation, our NABU reading app, and our bridge to literacy. Up until recently, we worked with contracted authors and illustrators in each country. And in a moment, I'll tell you about our process called the Creator Fellowship. But first, it's really important to understand that within our content methodology, we have developed a blueprint collection across 4 different levels that cover global themes. We use this blueprint collection as a way to trans-adapt our current content into new contexts. This allows us to have a starting point to then add original books from our creative fellowships onto. And I have some examples of this. So here you can see 3 different books. The original book was created in Rwanda and trans-adapted by local artists in the Philippines and in Romania into these different books. So the first one is the Rwandan book. Second one is the book trans-adapted into the Philippines. And the third is a book trans-adapted into Romania. You can see from the font to the characters to the very toys that they're playing with change. And that's part of our trans-adaptation process. It's not a translation process. It's a complete adaptation of the content. Sometimes names change. And most, illustrations always change. And sometimes context of the story has to change. So it's just a beautiful example of how we do that first process. Before I get into NABU Slate, the Creative Fellowship is our new content model. We have just finished our first cohort in Miami, which is really exciting. This Creative Fellowship process is a curriculum-based peer-to-peer learning model led by our global creative team. This enables us to have a process that can be replicated across geographies and communities around the world. Over the last year, we have worked to make our book creation process even more strategic and efficient by opening up the process and affording opportunities to more inspiring artists. I'm going to pass it on to Nikki now to discuss our new content creation engine and our reading app.
Yeah, happy to. Thank you so much, Jess. And if you wouldn't mind flipping to the next slide, that would be super. Yes. So excited about, I'll just add to the Creative Fellowship program as well, because it ties into what I'm going to explain to you in just a second, which is NABU Slate, which you see up on the screen. So the fellowship program is really going to be the primary way that NABU is going to be creating new, local, authentic content moving forward. One of the things that we really want to do, we want to maintain, we are so committed to ensuring that all of the content that's created by NABU is created by local authors, local illustrators, and all written through the lens of the local environment, the local lived experience, the local family structure, et cetera, et cetera. So, while we've been doing that with contracted artists who, have been able to be a part of workshops and programs that really help them to increase their skills, we saw that we had this unique opportunity not only to continue to create books to help us towards our mission of teaching children how to read and opening up their world of reading in their mother tongue languages, but we also have this opportunity to continue to train creatives, especially in areas where there's not as much opportunity. The arts is sort of suffering in a lot of ways globally, but if we saw this opportunity, if we can help train up additional creatives as we expand to new markets, then we almost feel mandated to do so. So the way we're going to work moving forward is that, as we create new content where we currently exist or when we enter new markets, we're going to roll it out in one way by setting up creative fellowship programs. And the way we've done it today is that it's a 10 to 12 week program. As Jess said, the curriculum has been completely designed by our magnificent global team. And by global team, I mean there are literally team members from the Philippines, Romania, East Africa, China, Australia, all over the place who are contributing to the curriculum and actually teaching these courses virtually. So, and at the end of that 10 to 12 week program, this cohort of roughly 15 creatives will have created 20 to 30 really high quality, beautiful books that not only will benefit our readers and families and be published to our app, but also will be published works that these creatives can now add to their CVs. So just wanted to add to that as a passion point, because we really saw that as an obligation on our part to do even more on the creative side. So in addition to the Creative Fellowship, another way that we are sort of transforming the way that we're creating content is through our new content management platform, which we've called NABU Slate. NABU Slate has been designed to be open to use by other organizations, other partners who would come alongside of NABU. So let's say our CEO is constantly getting calls from organizations literally all over the world saying, please come here, please come there. We need books in this language and that language. And we just simply can't keep up with the demand. In addition, it's expensive. We would have to fundraise and we would have to find the funding to support that. So we thought, okay, if we have all these partners that are super interested in coming in and helping to develop content, let's open up our system. And so the idea here with Slate is that it's a very user-friendly platform that will not only be used by our fellows and those artists who are working within NABU to create and publish new content, but now can be utilized by partners who we set up agreements with that can more quickly and efficiently help us to create content as well. So creating original books that are, locally relevant in the language, and then this will be used to publish directly to the NABU app, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Another benefit of the way that this has been set up is that we will be able to track impact. So those partners who come in with us can track, how many books they've created, how many readers are reading those books, how much time children are spending reading those books per day. So many different metrics that we can really take a look at. So two different systems now, related, fellowship, partnership, all feeding into our content creation. Next slide, please, Jess. And then finally, where do these books end up? They end up on our completely free NABU reading app. This is one of those things that every chance we get to tell more people, more organizations, more folks on the ground about this app, the better, because ultimately we want more children and families using it. It was intentionally created to be low bandwidth optimized. And all of our books can be downloaded for use offline. We are not blind to the fact that, Wi-Fi access and, internet access is still a tremendous, tremendous gap in so many of the communities that we are mutually serving, right? But if children and families can get to, a hotspot, a community center, a school where they can access the internet, they can download those books, take them home and read them with their families offline, which is amazing. And like I said, completely free. And at this point, the way we have it set up is that each country that we're operating in has their own version of the app, so that when they open that app, it's books that are just in, that language. And I also should add that all of our books are bilingual. So they're either bilingual in English or in the language of instruction, because we recognize that creating that bridge is also incredibly important. Next, so, NABU has reached a really important milestone this year, and that we have recently celebrated our 10-year anniversary. And for those of you who have been involved with startups, you know that there's a phase where you suddenly reach this moment where, we're established, and now we have to scale, and we have to figure out how to keep up with that, right? And how, not only that, but how do we turn the corner and really go deeper in terms of delivering on our mission, which is to ultimately eradicate illiteracy? So up until recently, NABU essentially has been an online publisher of books, right? We are going to continue that. We'll never abandon that mission, because we are so completely committed to that local, authentic material where children can actually see themselves in the books. But next, what we want to do is we're evolving into what we're calling NABU 3.0, which is an integrated app and a comprehensive web version. So that has been something we've been hearing a lot of demand for, is NABU on the web. Right now, our developers are almost finished with what we're calling a light version of the web version, which will be released, within the next couple of months. What that will do is it will open up our material to even more communities, because in schools that have desktops, or libraries, or even homes that just have desktops, our users will be able now to access the libraries on the internet, which is on the web, which is so exciting and so amazing. So also the NABU Slate content creation program that I mentioned will feed both into the app and the web version simultaneously. Next year, we're going to be working even harder on evolving the app itself to be more user-friendly, more beautiful, more interactive, better font, creating accessibility features, which is also probably a question that would have come up here. If it doesn't, I would be surprised. But right now, we don't have accessibility features woven into the app the way we would like. So we're going to be working on that. In addition to, really finalizing our next level web version. And then lastly, and most importantly, we will be working with experts who will help us to include features in the app that will help to drive us more towards literacy gains, so that we can actually measure if children are making gains in their literacy by utilizing these materials, tying into local school systems, tying into departments of education, ministries of education, being aligned with local curriculum, et cetera, et cetera. So this is going to be a big step for us, but it's ambitious, but we certainly hope to get here by the end of 2024.
Thank you, Nikki. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions on that. So last, but certainly not least, is our Bridge to Literacy program. So Bridge to Literacy is NABU's collaboration model for developing reading engagement strategies with like-minded partner organizations. Our goal is to integrate NABU tools into your current programming. How can we work together? Some examples of this is in Kenya, we are working with KEPSHA, and our aim is, we're working with teachers to integrate reading nudges that increase after-school reading activities. So we're working directly with teachers to create reading nudges that will then connect children to NABU books. Another example of this is in the Philippines. We're working with Vivita on workbooks, so teachers can use NABU as a resource in classrooms. We have many different examples of this, and it is a collaboration effort. We co-create these activities together, and we really work together to try and integrate NABU tools and to help other organizations or individuals use our tools in the way that they need them, right? So that's our Bridge to Literacy program. And, everyone on this call, if you are interested in working with us in this way, please contact me afterwards. We're always looking for more partners. And so our numbers, NABU by the numbers. We now currently serve 5.6 million users across Rwanda, Kenya, the Philippines, Romania, and Haiti. We have 2.08 app signups. We have trained 150 plus local authors and illustrators and published more than 1,000 titles in 15 languages. We have a growing community of 3,000 plus literacy champions. Literacy champions are our partners, organizations, or individuals that work with NABU tirelessly to improve literacy among children in some of the most undeserved communities. But most importantly, we are making a difference. And the slide shows Belize, but I'd like to share my own story. I was on a field trip, and when I asked a little girl, what she'd like to be when she was older, and she sat with me and she thought about it, and she replied, "Before, I thought I could be a wife or a mother or a teacher, And now I can be an engineer like Stella. Stella is a character in one of our books, and it is a character that looked like her, that came from the same background as her. And, you know, besides the numbers, this is really why we do what we do. If we can make a difference in even one girl's life, then it's worth it for us. And I'm sure many people on this call feel the same about what they do. So big picture, this map represents our expansion plan into different languages. We recently launched our West African lab in Lagos, Nigeria, which we are extremely excited and proud of. And we are looking to launch into Hausa as well as Tanzania and Uganda before the end of the year. But now with our new content creation tool, Slate, as well as our new partnership through Bridge to Literacy, this map may look very different based on partnerships. So to finish, I would like to just discuss some of the big challenges that we face at NABU, and then also open it up to questions from everyone on the call. So, you know, there are many challenges, but our top three would be meeting the demand for content in new languages and new regions. And like Nikki discussed earlier, this is why we've created NABU Slate. So we're really hoping that this new tool helps us in a more cost-effective way and just helps us scale to meet the demand. Second one is, like all tools, awareness is one of the biggest, you know, challenges that we face, is more people, more communities being aware of our tool. And then the last one is access to devices and internet. So we all know that the data shows that cell phone penetration is high and continuously increasing, but we know that that's not really the reality in the most rural parts of, you know, a lot of the contexts that we work in. The most vulnerable and rural communities, how do we access these communities when there are no devices and there is no infrastructure to support them? This is a challenge that we've been facing at NABU, and, you know, working with governments and telecommunication companies and schools has helped us. We have done some printing books, and that's also been successful. But, you know, this is a much bigger challenge, I think, and deserves a much larger discussion. So, yeah, thank you very much for listening to myself and Nikki. I would love to open up the floor to questions.
Thank you so much to both of you for sharing that. So yeah, if anyone has any thoughts on those challenge areas, if you could maybe drop them in the chat, or we can just shout them out. Maybe we can put them in the chat, write them out, or even put them back on the screen, maybe, Jess, so that people remember them. Perfect.
Yeah, sure.
So does anybody have any ideas or questions or suggestions, or did anything that Jessica and Nikki said resonate? Oh, I think Nazia's got her hand up.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for the extremely useful actually presentation, and it's incredible to see the work NABU is doing. So I have a very basic question: what actually NABU stands for? And then I would like to actually ask and discuss on that exactly the challenges where you left your presentation, the issues, particularly on the access to device and the internet, because I work with BRAC, and in BRAC International we work with the most marginalized in the context like South Sudan, Afghanistan, actually also. So in those areas I was just thinking that how do we really, if we would like to utilize your tools and the contents, how do we do that? Because definitely the kind of schools we work with, those are community-based schools where it's impossible to have the parents to actually make them actually to get their access to the internet and or even to the devices. So really actually how to do that, and in the long run, if we would really like to collaborate with NABU in those contexts I have just shared, how it's possible to do at an organizational level. That probably that could be like a separate discussion, but just like to know. But it's really interesting and very insightful. So thank you so much. It's really incredible. And also, I just would like to share that we also have programs in the Philippines. So it's really great to see that you are working like hard in the Philippines. So you have so many programs. So how do we can collaborate? So thank you so much.
Yeah. And I mean, so just your first question, NABU was the patron god of scribes, literacy, and wisdom, and the inventor of writing and divine scribe. So that's what NABU means. And Nikki, I think I hope I'm correct with that. It's actually one of the first times I've got that question, which is quite interesting. And then in terms of partnerships, please contact me. We can have that discussion, and then also I can put you in touch with our country managers, who are the most incredible people and who will have country context, country perspective, and will be able to really collaborate on the ground. Nikki, would you like to maybe add anything?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, one of the things as well that we've been thinking about, and actually talked to like a couple of device manufacturers who do this, but in hard to reach areas, we have talked to or started to look at some of these hub devices that could be used in like anything from refugee camps to just really rural school locations. Is it possible to have one of those hubs where the NABU content is uploaded? Is that one way we could get around it? As Jess mentioned, we've certainly printed books. I mean, I personally don't think it's something that we can really ignore. If we're trying to get these books into the hands of kids, we got to work around, what's realistic. So that's another thing that we're willing to tackle, but also transporting the books is obviously an issue, depending on where we are. But yeah, there's a lot of things that we could do. And really, tying into our Bridge to Literacy program, if there's a partner that's interested in testing this out with us, we actually have an application process for Bridge to Literacy that can be accessed on our website. And there is a component of this that includes like a stipend or, some modest financial support for our partners, so that if we do want to test out a new way of doing things, that there's that incentive for the partners as well, because we really want to work with all of you to find what's going to work the best, in the communities where we're partnering up. So that's an option as well. And I do just want to mention quickly before we go on to the next question that we actually do have a couple of our country managers on here. I'm not going to put them on the spot, but Beryl is our country manager in Kenya. So huge shout out to Beryl. I think I saw Christina. Yeah, Christina is our country manager in Romania. And yeah, I'm not sure that we have any other country managers on here, but we do have another colleague, Danae, that's on the call as well. So we couldn't do what we do without the folks who are actually carrying out the work on the ground. So much love to them.
Thanks so much.
Brilliant. I think we have another hand up. Is it Jawad?
Yeah, thank you, Steph. This is Jawad from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and thank you so much for GSF for organizing this, and NABU for this presentation. This is actually really insightful, and for some reason we never came across NABU for a very long time. As you know, like we work a lot in early grade literacy and numeracy. And one of the key things that we are focusing on is like building literacy outside classrooms as well as building that like kind of supplementary readers within the classroom. My question primarily was to how are you thinking about the use of AI, especially on the illustration and content writing? Because we have a grantee that we are working with in Mali who's basically is working on the same idea of like local language books, development of books, but they are using AI for that. So we would be happy to put you in touch with them as well if that could help you kind of create content for your platform with some kind of relationship with them. And the other thing that I wanted to understand was, what's the age group that or competency level that your books really focus on? Because some of our relationship with other organizations have shown that these tech-enabled reading programs or literacy building or numeracy building programs are really helpful for children who have some basics, right? And children who have struggled with even the initial kind of reading, they don't really get benefited by these kind of applications. So what's your take on that? And yeah, also like what competency level does it go through? Does it go from letter words up to comprehensive reading, or is it that you need to have certain basic level of reading skills before you can make use of this platform? Thank you.
Jess, do you want me to take that one? Cool. So I'll actually start with your last question. So we do have our books leveled, and our target age range is 0 to 10, 0 to 12. So there is material on the app that is meant to be for the earliest readers. So early childhood development, really those kids that are preschool, like literally before school. I do think we can do a better job of that. And to that end, we have just recently hired a learning designer, and she happens to be on the call. Her name is Judy. But yes, our books are meant to be accessible to, to the most basic reader, regardless of their age. If reading is really a new thing, we do have different levels of material that can cater to the level of proficiency for the reader. Another, I guess we could add this to the challenge board. I may as well address it now, is that parents themselves are often illiterate. So, this is something that we've really been grappling with as well. We have this theory that, adding audio will not only help with accessibility, for the hearing impaired, but also may help with parents reading with their kids, because if the parents themselves are illiterate or not at a functional literacy level, then this will help having that audio and hopefully have the effect of, helping the parents learn how to read as well. To the point about AI, very, very good timing on that comment. Actually, we just had a meeting with an organization yesterday that's interested in testing this out with us, particularly in creating written content. We can't ignore the fact that AI is a very real part of our world right now. Even on the creative side, when it comes to illustration, our chief technology officer and creative director have started to experiment with that as well. We don't want to take away the human creativity piece, but like, how can we bridge that gap? Certainly when it comes to AI, we may be able to do so much more when it comes to translations. We've tried some software programs in the past to do translations. Unfortunately, they fall short of reality. So there needs to be an element of like human quality control on that. But we are very open to how we can utilize AI in order to, really get to scale faster and get to the populations who really need this material. So very open to introductions to other organizations as well. So thank you for that, Jawad. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I think Amanda wrote in the chat she would love to know how she could get involved with Slate. So Amanda, if you're there, maybe we can give some suggestions. Not sure.
I did speak to Amanda yesterday as well, so I do know her questions. She reached out to me before the call because she was interested. So yeah, I'll follow up with her as well.
Perfect. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to add or ask? I was just wondering, maybe you've already covered it, but just to understand a little bit more about like what partnerships could look like in terms of how varied can they be? Like, do you have in mind kind of certain partnership structures, or are you quite open to any possible way of reaching children, whether it's through, because in my mind, I was thinking of things like the Microsoft expert educators and communities like this. But do you have kind of particular priority partnership pathways, or are you really open to sort of people proposing anything?
So we have a very flexible partnership model, and we do this also because every country is different, every context is different, and we really want it to be a community-led partnership. We want these grassroots organizations, or, maybe they're fintech companies doing, extracurriculum, there's so many different ways we can reach children. And by creating such a, stiff structure, we could miss some incredible ways to reach children. So we have a very flexible partnership model.
Perfect. And I just wondered, if the people that are with us and joining, does anyone have like an approach in their work that they think might work for NABU, or like, did it spark any ideas and something that you're doing, even if it's not exactly the same model? Is there anything you think you could maybe share? Or anybody else here working on literacy and reading, and you have your own insights to maybe compare?
Hi, this is Mark. I'm calling from World Reader. We are basically in the same game as NABU. I imagine that some of you may be familiar with our work. Coincidentally, the organization was also founded in 2010 with more or less the same goal, kind of like use technology to support reading across the world. We have a different approach to how we curate and develop content. But for example, this past year, we started what we called World Reader Originals, which is our own IP in content development, because we were seeing some limitation in how we can use the content that we curate and license from the global and local publishers across the different geographies where we work. We don't focus so much, I would say, in mother tongue languages. We cover 6 large main languages: English, Arabic, Swahili, Spanish, and other languages. And of course, we also have some local languages, but not in large volumes. I would be very interesting. I would definitely like to hear from Jessica and the team how we are ensuring continuous engagement from the readers and the users on NABU's offering. Access is definitely one of the main issues to solve, and I think both NABU, for example, World Reader, we just crossed 22 million readers this year. Is something definitely important to do, but how we really keep families, teachers, educators, caregivers, and using regularly the resources that we build and prepare for them in a world where the attention span is probably the most valuable thing that anybody has. So it would be very interesting to hear how NABU is approaching the continuous engagement of their users.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. I think we have that in common. That's definitely sort of the question of the day, right? As we're looking to the future, it's one thing to say that, we're now, we've got 2.08 million signups of the app, and we're reaching, hopefully through that, like 5 to 6 million children. It's another to see the metrics of who's using it. So we just started talking about this over the last couple of weeks, like what do we really want to drill down on? So we can see what we call returning users, and we're basing that like sort of our definition that we're using for that is that anyone that's made at least one page turn in a book in a given day. So we look at like how many children, regardless of where they are, how many children have actually made that page turn in a day. We want to see that number going up. We also look at time spent reading. So we can see the average time spent reading per day per country. We can see the overall time spent reading. Our goal is really 15 minutes a day, because I think that's a pretty well-known indicator that if, kids spend at least 15 minutes a day reading, that, their literacy will greatly improve. So those are a couple of the things, but, one of the things that we want to accomplish through this notion of bridge to literacy and partnerships is testing out some of these things in a very real way in communities to see, I think the CAPTCHA example is a good one, by utilizing essentially teachers who hold a lot of authority in the community when it comes to children's reading, having teachers use the app as part of homework assignments, right? That almost sort of, as long as the kids do the homework, that almost sort of guarantees engagement in the app. But we really haven't cracked that nut yet. And, would love to continue discussion about this, because it really is one of those things that we want to see improve. It ties directly into our theory of change. So we're obligated to ensure that we can not only track that, but also come up with ways that we know work. So we haven't solved it yet, essentially.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Nikki. And I think we've got a question in the chat from Mercy. So maybe if we can take this as our last question, and then I'm going to ask everyone if we can do the infamous screen grab with our cameras on, but let's go to Mercy's question first. Shall I read it out? So she said it would be great to understand how NABU bridges the gap between children learning, reading, gaining literacy through mother tongue and the expected learning or official languages in the schools. For example, if the main teaching language is English or French and the mother tongue is Kinyarwanda.
Sure, this is a really great question. And it's really, one part of it is the dual language in our books, because it's in mother tongue and the language of instruction. So for example, in Rwanda, we'll have books in Kenyan Rwandan, and then underneath the text will be in English. And we find that really helps in bridging the understanding between the two languages. But again, this also only really helps in countries where there's policies in place or where schools prioritize mother tongue and, like reading and mother tongue instruction. So we see that in Rwanda, because of policies, there's a increase in like the need or the increase of like teachers and schools and, using mother tongue reading materials. And that we see that the same in Kenya and Nigeria and the Philippines. I'm not sure in different contexts if it would be the same where there wasn't that push for mother tongue instruction. Yeah, I don't know. And that's, another big question for us as well. Nikki, I don't know, do you want to add to that? I'm sure you.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, regardless of the national policy in terms of the language of instruction, our theory still comes back to, having access to mother tongue books early on is extremely important and indicative of how children will perform in terms of their literacy, by grade 3. So we've been really careful and consistent to ensure that we're at least having that bilingual option in all of our books. And in some cases, there might be two, like you might be able to do Kinyarwanda English and Kinyarwanda French. And then in the Philippines, for example, all of the books have Tagalog, but we also at this point have 5 additional languages out of the nearly 200 in the Philippines. So we're well aware. Not only is the language of instruction, important. It's also, we're hearing from families that they do want their children to learn, English and, the language of instruction. So we're being responsive to that as well. So I think just that notion of having like more than one language in the book is really how we're trying to tackle that issue.
Thank you. And I guess anyone here, if you think of any ideas to that afterwards, you can send an email to Jessica and Nikki. So probably just going to start wrapping up. But thank you so much for everyone's contributions. And if you don't mind, if we could really briefly just put cameras on to take a quick screen grab so that we can showcase what we did today in our member newsletter, that would be fantastic if you're able to.